Okay.
And ta-da, here we are.
Ta-da!
Always have a moment to begin with of let's just have some ambient noise. So I'm be quiet for a few seconds. And we begin in the beginning.
Hi.
Hi, Yael. So today is January 28th, 2021. And that is a significant date in my family because it is my oldest child's 26th birthday. And it is also at the end of the first month of 2021. And after last year, we were all looking for, I'm sure, a new beginning, a new normal. Uh, so I'm wondering, how have things begun for you?
Well, my new beginnings all started in 2020. I sold my childhood home, ran off on an adventure. Um, so there's one new beginning. Um, with the intention of starting my travels, now that I've let go of the house, um, I ended up before I just start traveling full time and whatever, I ended up making a stop in Joplin, Missouri, and staying there for a year, just about a year, while I pick up a husband for these travels that I'm planning.
Was the husband planned or was that?
No, it wasn't planned that he would be a husband, but it was pretty much that it could go in that direction, and we'll see what happens. And he was always very, even when we first started talking about being getting together, he was very supportive. He said, "I don't want to stop you from doing anything that you want to do."
Hmm.
Um, he said, "I just want to be here, for when you want to come home."
Hmm.
Which was very sweet in itself. And then after I moved down there and we started talking, then he became intrigued with the traveling lifestyle also. So he kind of jumped on board, and so he started downsizing, and he got rid of most of his worldly possessions also, and just started letting go and being more free.
Nice.
So now we are here at our first stop, which is in Linwood, Georgia, managing this building, this community, learning what we can, enjoying the time we're here, um, banking some money while we're here, which is helping, which is very nice. Um, and then we set sail at some point, probably in the next year or so. We're probably going to head west. Um, we're both thinking Arizona, but I've never been to Texas. So maybe, I don't know. These are all stops so the travels are taking longer because we're like staying at these places, but I'm enjoying it. Anyway, that's what's in the beginning. This is the beginning of that life and journey and stuff for me.
Sure.
And that's my story on that right now. So I'm loving 2020 and I'm loving 2021 because the whole world says 2021 is going to be oodles better than 2020. So I can't wait.
So you had some pretty positive things happen for you in 2020.
Absolutely.
So if we
Yeah.
build on that, then
Yes.
things are heading in a good direction.
Right. So I wish the rest of the world could. I understand how the rest of the world has, they're stressing about other things and other things are affecting them, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of pain going on in the world. Um in the meantime, I try to help whoever I can to work through and process their pain, and whatever I can do to help.
Sure.
So it was also a good beginning for, I feel like Life Teaches is finally becoming.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like Life Teaches is finally actually what it's intended to be.
Okay.
It's
Right.
in the starting stages, and this
Sure.
podcast is like skyrocket. everything. So I'm just really excited about everything right now.
That's really cool. Well, that's an interesting contrast because, as you said, lots of people, including me at times, are concerned about what else is happening, with politics and, you know, healthcare and, the economy and all kinds of things. There's lots of reasons to be concerned. And I remember going back to how I began with Benjamin and spending, not only was he 11 weeks premature, but because he was 11 weeks premature, he spent about 4, maybe 5 months in the NICU, which is a very, very different experience than.
See, in my head, I don't know if you are at the point to see your story the same way I do. The way I see it is Benjamin came out, he started out a fighter.
Mhm.
Started out going, I'm on my way, I'm in a hurry, I got things to do.
Yes. Well,
So that just tells me a strong personality,
oh,
like
for sure.
automatically from the start.
And that eagerness
Hmm.
has been a dominant characteristic of him since then.
That's
Since,
awesome.
since
I love
actually
that.
before the beginning, because before he was born,
Hmm.
we actually, to put it maybe in layman's language, Martha was in a prayer, and part of that prayer kind of was uh, talking about where Benjamin, where the still in womb, right?
Hmm.
And part of the prayer was, he's eager to come.
But I wonder at the time, you didn't know any of that. So
Well, at
at
the
the
time,
time, I'm sure it was scary.
that was very scary. I
The
mean,
fact that he's 11 weeks premature, and medically speaking, we didn't know back then what kind of complications, how to deal with that kind of stuff. And
right.
that was scary. I know a lot of people who have, you know, I was born 2 weeks late. My sister was born a month premature.
Hmm.
I do have a friend who was born 3 months premature.
Wow.
And not knowing how developed he is and not knowing how if he'll survive outside, all that kind of stuff. I'd imagine I would have been scared at the
It,
time.
definitely. And I mean, it was very jarring.
Hmm.
I mean, just that Friday night, on January 27th,
Right.
those years ago,
Hmm.
the fact that I'm in late, Martha telling me I'm in labor, I'm like, what the crap, that can't,
Right.
that doesn't compute.
We're not ready for that. Nope, not yet. Put it on hold.
And we'd been preparing, we'd been going to, uh, prenatal classes and so forth,
Right.
and put that all on hold because that's not happening.
Right.
And we get whisked into the hospital. The doctors and nurses and therapists and all kinds of things are rushing around.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was very startling. And then, for the pregnancy, for the birth to happen, and they started out trying to have him come, natural, but it ended up being a C-section.
Oh, it was C-section. Okay.
And, which added uh, to the experience.
Hmm.
And
What numbers? Is this your first one?
yeah, this is
Okay.
number one. And he
So
comes
you've
out
never
and
done any of this before. Got it.
he's 2 pounds 9 ounces, about
Oh,
14
wow.
inches long. So just a little bitty guy.
Hmm.
And it's just startling. And both Martha and I are finishing up school. And I remember just going back to school and just kind of being in a daze for the next few months while we're wrapping things up, because it was so different from what what we expected and what we experienced.
Yeah.
And we had no idea really what to expect, but and that's kind of the way things are in the beginning, right? Whether we're talking about you selling your house last year, or us having our first child, or
Right.
moving cross country or whatever. But when we in the beginning, because all we can see is what we see in the beginning,
Right.
the journey ahead can be really exciting, like you were talking about, looking at 2021 with lots of excitement
Mm-hmm.
about, if 2021 is destined to be an improvement on 2020, then things are looking pretty good for you, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
But whereas if we started out with more of a, we used the term earlier, burr under the saddle,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh,
know
is that what you meant by that? I know you mentioned the term, but I didn't know what it meant.
okay, yeah, so a burr under
Okay.
the saddle is like, when you're, and I'm not a horseman at all, but I imagine it's, when you've got a burr into the saddle, it's causing discomfort for the horse and probably not creating a great ride
Got it. Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
rider. And so it's like, oh my gosh, how do we handle this? How do we move forward?
Yeah.
And uh, so when things, where you're at and what's going on in your environment oftentimes has a big impact on what your expectations are going forward. So in the beginning, when things are going well, that's awesome, because we can oftentimes expect things to even get better. Although they're
This is where the word momentum comes in handy.
yes,
You're building momentum in whichever direction you're going in. Are you going are you going in this direction because you're building up the momentum? Are you going where, like for me, everything's exciting. That's what I'm attracting. I'm attracting more excitement.
sure,
Whereas someone else who is building momentum in fear um, or angst of any kind, um, if you're if that's where your emotions are, you're building momentum in that, and that's what you're attracting.
mm,
And it's the momentum, it's the emotions.
sure,
That's what you're building the momentum on. It
sure,
doesn't even matter what you're looking at, what you're focused on, or anything like that. But if you're looking at, if all you're seeing is, look at the numbers rising, look at, all these people who are dying from it, all these people who are scared to death to leave their house, that kind of stuff. All you're looking at is the politics going on in the world, and this is a conspiracy, and this is, all this stuff, whatever, I could read the news to you or whatever, but you get what I'm saying.
I do. Yep,
If that's what you're focused on, that's what you're attracting. Is you're attracting more news like that. Quit
right,
looking at it.
yep, yeah,
Quit looking at it and leave it alone. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. What are you going to do about it right now? The only thing you're doing about it right now is stressing out about it. If you're writing some letters, that's fantastic. Go write some letters and then go live your life.
sure.
But, do what you can about it, but don't let that be your whole life.
I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago, and in it I was riffing off of the idea of a spiral, right? So a spiral can, be an inward turning spiral where
Right.
things continue to devolve,
Right.
where you're attracting, as you say, all the stress and the anxiety and so forth
More negative
about,
emotions, as I put it.
I'm sorry,
More negative emotions,
right?
as I put it.
So negative emotions, negative responses, negative reality, right? So you can spiral that way, but you can also
Mhm.
spiral the other way. So,
Mhm.
even if things are going, and one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is, if you find yourself in that place where maybe things haven't been going the way that you would like them to be going, how
Right.
do you change direction? Well, that spiral can begin at any time, right? And it
Right.
doesn't have to, there isn't any magical point where, okay, wave a magic wand and press
The
the
same the
thing.
same events the same events are happening in the world that I live in the same events are happening in my world. Those are just not the events that I choose to focus on.
Sure. So,
I'm not blind to things happening around me. I just choose not to. I'm more focused on the positive stuff.
right. And that's
I,
really where kind of our point of view, our worldview, if we're in the beginning of our story,
mhm,
we have choice as to what the story is going forward, right?
right.
And we can either spiral downwards or we can
Right.
spiral outwards and be more creative. How do we create more excitement? How do we create more energy? How do we
We
create more
can't
positive results?
we can't change the past, but there's a but on the end of that. We can't change the past, but by changing your perspective of it, you I feel like I have changed my past.
Absolutely.
Um I grew up feeling like, oh, poor me. My dad was abusive, my mom completely ignored us. Um I had shitty friends. I had, my family life sucked. I was the oldest, always getting in trouble, getting my ass kicked, running away from home, got into drugs, dropped out of school, spent some time in rehab, blah, 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 blah. All kinds of boy drama. Always a boy drama. Um, and then, so anyway, that was my life back then.
Sure.
And now, um, so you can imagine my state of mind back
Hmm.
then. And then, okay, let's talk about specifically my relationship with my dad. At the time, my dad was a monster. He was a tyrant. I wished him dead every day.
Mm.
It was horrible. We had like the worst relationship. Now when I look back, I feel like I've always been daddy's princess. Honestly, because I was able to change my story.
That's a big change in
So I
narrative.
didn't, yeah, I feel like I've always been daddy's princess.
Mm.
I mean, even the times that, yeah, he used to kick my ass, but I feel differently about it. I don't condone anything that he did, but I forgave him when I understood him.
Mm.
I don't, not necessarily understood that, but understood him.
Mm.
He didn't have an example. He thought he would, his intentions, whatever. Blah. I can make excuses all day long.
Sure.
So I know that his intention was not, to just to, inflict pain upon his daughter. That was not his intention. At the
Sure.
time, that's what I thought. It's like
Right.
he's just doing everything to make me suffer.
Right.
So
And that's an
anyway,
interesting
so
point, that one, that you can change your narrative so drastically, and two, one of the things that I'm becoming much clearer on is that our beginnings are oftentimes, well, almost invariably impacted by our endings, right? So, the relationship that you had with your dad set the stage for, you know, your life going forward. And you could continue to hold on to the pain and him viewing him as a tyrant, and his whole purpose in life was to inflict pain upon you. Or you can change the narrative and say, okay, let's see if I can understand him better so that I can change my perspective and create something more positive going forward, right?
exactly. Um, and I guess that's kind of what I do with a lot of people is I hear their story and I can sense the pain they're in from as they're telling me the story. Um, and then I guess I see it from a different perspective, and I try to direct them into just a different perspective. I don't want to shock them by saying, "Well, at least blah blah blah." you know, but
Let's
I
do a
start out
180-degree turn without any transition
right,
there.
exactly. So the first thing, the first thing that I do is I let them know that I can see where they are.
Hmm.
Um, I can see where they are and I understand where they are. I understand, if I know anything about their past or if I know, whatever the case is, I understand where they are. Um, but I've learned to not back down from where I am.
Hmm. Yeah, and the way that I'm envisioning that is, you're further along on your journey.
Right.
They're still back where you were at one time
Hmm.
in their own experience, their own world.
Right.
You can still have empathy for, where they are,
Right.
but you can also hold out hope that things that there is possibility that things can change for the better, right?
Right.
It's kind of like when I was stuck in depression
Hmm.
and hope was just a word for me. It was, something that I held out as a possibility. It was not a reality. It was
Right.
it,
I understand. I do.
and the shift that I went under from going, really, really dangerously depressed to healing from that and finding much greater joy and satisfaction in my life. That didn't happen, at a weekend event. That
Right.
didn't there wasn't, some 15-minute speech
Exactly.
that I heard that was like, oh my gosh, my life is a million times better. I mean, there were weekends and there were speeches
Hmm.
that I heard and there were books that I read that did
Hmm.
make a difference, but it was
Hmm.
the combination of all those as well as the
It took steps.
exactly.
It took steps. You couldn't be here and go to here all in one leap. It took steps. You were here and then you moved a little here and then sometimes you went back here a little bit and then you moved a little up and then a little back and then a little up and then a little back. It's kind of like a dance.
Right, right. Kind of
So
good.
anyway, so you're inching your way forward
Yeah,
along the journey. But the
yeah,
whole point is, for me, what has been my saving grace is remembering that it's all a journey.
yes,
This is just the step along the way.
absolutely. Yeah, and
What has made the difference for me is now I feel like I understand the healing process enough to practice it on myself.
sure,
And shortening the gap between now I'm in pain and now I'm, feeling optimistic again, feeling hopeful again, feeling healed.
sure.
So to shorten the gap between the two. I've learned to shorten the gap on that.
Yeah, and to realize that one of the ways that I've learned to shorten the gap is to acknowledge where I am, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's key.
that can be both, as far as the gratitude part, and be grateful for where I am and what the good things are
Mm-hmm.
around me. But it's
Right.
also just as important, I've found, and a little bit more counterintuitive
Right.
to acknowledge fully how crappy things are. Right.
Yes. I think that's one of the things that I've been telling I've been suggesting to several people who have been, asking my advice, which is really kind of flattering, by the way, that people actually ask my advice. Anyway, one thing that's come up quite a bit is I told one lady, she was talking about how strong she is and she's tired of being strong and stuff like that. And I said, go lock yourself in a closet for a half hour a day, set a timer, and go cry
Mm,
or write or draw or do something creative.
mm,
Don't go, like I said, lock yourself in a closet. Nobody has to know about it. But it's time for you. Don't be strong.
mm,
For a half hour a day, allow yourself that time. If you feel like that's what you're suffering through, then go do that. Rip the band-aid off. Half hour a day, set a timer. And I said, or give yourself an hour or two, whatever. But the point is, let yourself be that person because
sure.
denying it is only going to make that feeling even stronger.
Absolutely. which is the
So let
ironic
yourself
thing.
set a timer. Let yourself be that person. Mhm.
The
Go on.
ironic thing is, when we are feeling poorly, feeling
Right.
bad, the first response for most of us, I think, I know for me, is to get away from that, right? You know, I don't I don't want to be experiencing what I'm experiencing.
Right.
I want to get away from it. And so it's flight, and so
Mhm.
it's denial about, how I'm feeling right now. But if we actually just
Right.
stay there for a moment, I just finished one of the books that I read last year was 90 Seconds to a Life You Love by Joan Rosenberg. And the whole point of the book is just be with those uncomfortable feelings, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
the reason it's called 90 Seconds to a Life You Love is because you don't have to spend, I mean, you're talking about locking yourself in the closet for 30 minutes. John Rosenberg talks about 90 seconds, but the point
Right.
is that if you fully acknowledge where you're at the moment,
Right.
rather than denying or pushing it aside or whatever, or you know
Mhm.
taking your attention off by
Well, I think that is the key. You're
it is.
one who doth protest too much.
I'm
Did I
sorry.
lose you? Are you gone?
I
My
don't think
connection is
so.
unstable. My internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, you come in and out a little bit, but I think we'll just continue on, and
Okay.
we'll edit this part.
Okay. Okay. That's fine.
And maybe what I had to do is
So,
just do a really loud so we know where to edit, uh,
okay.
and hopefully I didn't
So
just bore
now
you.
you just did. So, okay.
Anyway, but we're talking about being in that place where we just fully acknowledge how we're feeling. That
Yeah.
was a turning point for me in
Mhm.
my healing journey, was just accepting where I was, rather than
Right.
fighting, rather than feeling badly about be feeling badly. I mean,
Exactly. That's exactly it. Is you're feeling bad about feeling bad. Just let yourself feel bad for a minute.
yeah,
And I end up telling a lot of people is it's not that I don't have bad days. It's not that my life is fixed. My life is my life is perfect, but I don't really have bad days anymore. I
hmm
have bad moments.
yep,
Sometimes I might last a couple hours, you know.
yeah,
But the point is, I used to have that feeling. That feeling would last weeks, months, even years.
yep,
And I've learned how to not have that feeling anymore.
yes, exactly,
Is I let myself feel.
yes,
That's the secret.
exactly. And it's and so bring this back to the beginning.
Oh, good. We did it right. Go on.
If things aren't looking the way that we want them to be looking, and maybe the beginning that we're looking at right now
Hmm.
is not where we want to be,
Hmm.
perhaps another way to look at that is to think, well, this beginning or this moment could also be an ending, right? And an opportunity for a new beginning.
Hmm.
That what Another thing that I did while I was struggling with depression
Right.
was I had a Pinterest board where I just pinned, I don't know, probably hundreds of photos of sunrises and eventually sunsets as well. And just
Right.
and the board was called A New Day, right?
Okay.
Because every day is a new day. You don't
Hmm.
have to wait for, December 31st or January 1st to,
Right.
start again. You can start again literally this minute,
Hmm.
it doesn't have we can begin again now. We don't have to wait for some defined point in time in order
Right.
to give ourselves permission to begin again. And so,
Yeah. Um, I had a thought a moment ago, and I lost it.
it's gone.
Sorry. It's gone. Um,
but
We were
perhaps,
talking, changing the story. It was changing the story specifically. Um, the point is that they don't realize that they changed, that you tell the story.
right, that
How do
you
you
are
want
the
to tell the
narrator.
story? Right. So you're deciding how to tell the story.
Yes.
So a lot of people, they let the story just kind of fester in their head. If something's going on in your life that just really sucks, tell the story. For me, writing it down works a lot better than just saying it. Um, whether even just saying it in your head, but tell the story of what's going on in your head. Um, and then change the story. You get to decide how the story is being told. It's your story.
And that brings an interesting point in that, just oftentimes one of the reasons that we get stuck in our story, that
Mhm.
the downward spiral continues to spiral downward,
Right.
is because, again, that momentum idea,
Hmm.
but two, also because we don't stop long enough to just appreciate where we are. And
Right.
one of the ways that we can do that is through writing. It can be through
Right.
speaking, it can be through drawing, it can be through going for a walk, it can be through whatever.
I had before I sold my house or even considered selling my house, I was working part-time, earning about $1,000 a month, um, supporting a household that cost about $2,500 a month,
Hmm,
um, charging rent for whoever I could, um, to supplement. I was also doing some catering jobs here and there, get some to earn some more money. I did not want to go out and get another full-time corporate job.
sure.
Um, and I was trying to figure out this whole entrepreneur thing and living off my savings. Thankfully I had a lot more in savings than I realized I did.
Hmm,
Um, I did end up cashing in my 401k. I also had credit cards. Um, I racked up credit card bills, stuff like
sure.
that. Ended up with probably 60, I think it was, yeah, it ended up to be about $65,000 in credit card stuff, credit cards and personal loans and stuff like that. Um, so all that stuff. Oh, the dog's wagging his tail and there's a breeze over here. um, anyway, so all that stuff was going on. And needless to say, I was stressing about it. Um, but I was trying hard not to because I was trying so hard to just have faith that everything's going to work out. Things always work out. And the way that I worked it is I'm like, I know things are going to work out. I have no idea how. I have no idea how things are going to work out. Don't know if I'm going to a you know, opportunity, if I'm going to get offered a job, don't know I'm going to just inherit a bunch of money. I don't know. But things always work out somehow. I have no idea how. I had to have faith in that. Um, and I just kept plugging along and stuff. And then eventually I decided to sell the house. I'm furthering along on my journey and I was, minimizing or downsizing everything. I decided to sell the house. And when I sold the house, um, I said I wanted $100,000 of money in my pocket. So whether I use a realtor or I tried not to use a realtor because I really didn't have much faith in how much I'd get for the house. Um, and then and anyway, I ended up getting 91,000. I walked away with 91,000 and some change,
Hmm,
plus the money that I had, in escrow was like 6,000. And then there was some other refund or something else that I ended up. Turned out I ended up with 100,000.
Wow.
I walked away with $100,000.
Nice.
So, and that $100,000, by the way, I paid off all my credit cards, all my debts, all personal loans, my financial life. My credit score now is 825.
Hmm.
I think it's 825 and 815 are the
Hmm.
credit scores right now. I'm working this job, like I said, you know, it's part of my journey. This isn't where I'm gonna land.
Sure.
Um, I'm happily married now. Um, still living my honeymoon in my head. This is what 2 months later that we're married. We've been together for about a year now, a little over a year.
Sure.
So I'm still, in la la land on that usually. Living this job, just having fun being here. So anyway, this is my life now.
Sure.
So it's a matter of it, it's the perspective. How are you looking at it? Your thoughts create your reality. What's the story you're telling yourself? For me, I think of like when I'm in the midst of it, I start out by thinking 5 years from now, I'm going to be in a better place. What is that place going to look like?
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I start working towards, okay, how can I start working? What can I do now to start working towards that better place?
Sure.
And then if I can shrink that 5 years down to 2 years, down to a year, down to a month, down to, oh, look, here we are.
Sure, but it's stopping long enough to make that plan
Exactly.
to tell that
Exactly.
story.
Right. Which is why you got to let yourself feel it. Own where you are.
Absolutely.
Stop being afraid of where you are.
Yeah, when I with my one of the things I've done with my business is my business is called Gifts into Gold,
Right.
and the gold part of it I have is an uh, what is it called, an acrostic. So the
Okay.
G is go the distance, O is own this step on the journey, right?
Mhm. I
And
love that. I didn't know. I've never known this.
L
Okay.
is, what is L? Look beyond the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And D is designed for everybody's profit.
I
So,
love it.
but that second point, own this step of the journey, you know, if you just stop and appreciate where you are,
Mm-hmm.
or just acknowledge where you are, just like you were feeling, I'm sure that it was kind of night and day, I imagine, for you financially, dealing
Mm-hmm.
with all the credit card debt and so forth that you were dealing with, having this house that was, the expenses are 2,500 and you were bringing in about 1,000, you
Right.
know, that's not a comfortable place to be.
Exactly.
And realizing, by ending this story about this house ownership, that you had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to begin a new story that,
Right.
put you in a very different place.
Right.
And so perhaps for our audience this week, your homework is to acknowledge where you are right now. What is
Mm-hmm.
working for you? What is not working for you? What part of your
Mm-hmm.
story needs to stop, reach a conclusion, and what part of your story needs to begin so that you
That's
can create
awesome. Yes.
the life that you want to be living.
Yeah. So own where you are. Where are you right now? What's good? What's bad? What do you want to change? And what do you want to just get better and just keep going?
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. That's a great thing for people to, hopefully lots of people will be doing their homework. I can't wait to hear the stories.
That's right. I can't wait to hear the stories either. Until then, we will have our
We'll have an
report
outro here.
and our